Field Vision Sports presents The Matchup with Sasha Bushka.
Kyler Murray kind of looks like a little kid running from his parents when he scrambles in the pocket.
Scott Bushka.
I had to tell my daughter that today wasn't really about her first day of school. It was really about me and the launch of our company.
And Cody Alexander.
Randomly, no. As somebody who's been around football my entire life, I literally can say that I've never smelled smelling salts, nor have I ever seen anybody actually have smelling salts. I'm sure that they were used at some point.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome into The Matchup by Field Vision Sports. Excited to have you with us as always. Episode 25 straight ahead. I'm your host, Sasha Bushka, joined by the head of football ops, Cody Alexander, and Scott Bushka. Fellas, how we feeling today?
Doing great.
It's Merry Christmas, fellas. Is
That's
that
right.
Sasha? Is that I know it was off air, but you did mention to me that our favorite place, Emerson Biggins, had half-price drinks last night. Was that a Christmas hangover that made it such that you couldn't think of a nickname for me?
It wasn't that I couldn't think of it. I just felt like that's what you deserved the day after Christmas, is just a muted intro. But yeah, it might be a little bit of that factor.
I feel like I do deserve that after 3 maniac kids on Christmas and the NFL making me work and trying to pay attention to Christmas games and people wondering why I was still watching the Texans-Ravens game when it was 30-2. I feel like I do deserve that. So thank you, Sasha.
I thought about calling you the Grinch of Field Vision Sports because you were based on our prep for this show, and we'll get into it, but it seems like you were clearly mad that the NFL is playing on Christmas, which is a very Grinch.
I mean, we can talk about it, but I actually wasn't mad at all. But I find the discourse interesting because it seems like a lot of people are mad, but it also feels like all the people that are mad are the people that work in the NFL and had to cover it on Christmas, whereas like my in-laws were pumped that there were football games on.
Yeah, because they're
Which is
not
kind of the
required
point.
to watch them.
Right.
What's that?
Because they're not required to watch them.
Right.
So they're just like, well, if it's a good game, I got something to do. If not, I'll move on. If it's 30-2, I won't watch the rest of it.
Right.
Yeah, but people love, I mean, let me just put it on record. I'm not really in support of teams playing on Wednesday. It just feels greedy. But I am in support of the NFL trying to play on Christmas Day because it's like it makes it like Thanksgiving. Everyone looks forward to Thanksgiving in football and just like having it on in the background. Yeah. And they're kind of turning Christmas into that, which I think in general is a good thing for the people, a bad thing for people who work in football like us.
Yeah. When I honestly, when I looked ahead this year in the offseason and saw that Christmas fell on a Wednesday, I was like, that's the one day of the week that the NFL won't play is Wednesday. And they proved me wrong. They will play on Wednesday because, I mean, Tuesday wouldn't be such a big deal because it's just you put it with the week before. And
Right.
It's like a Monday night football game, and then those teams play the following Sunday. But Wednesday is really wonky. They had to have all 4 of those teams play the Saturday before. All 4 of those teams played 3 games in 10 days, really late in the season. And I'm not really sure like exactly when everybody else's buys were, but like the Chiefs, for example, had a bye in week 5. So they've played 10 weeks in a row, and now they're playing 3 games in 10 days. It is a little rough for the teams, but I'm sure they got a big payday from Netflix, and Netflix made plenty of money off of the deal as well. So we're all happy. And like, it's a larger point too. It's the players are going to want to complain. But the NFL is a revenue sharing model with the salary cap. And so like the salary cap goes up every year, and it's because of stuff like this. It's the same thing with Thursday night football.
Right.
Players want to complain that we shouldn't play Thursday night football, but do you want to give that Amazon Prime money back when you get 49 to 51% of it, whatever the collective bargaining split is right now? And the answer is no. The reason the contracts get bigger is because of stuff like this.
Yeah, and football is just a weird sport, because it is a sport of attrition. You do kind of need that whole week for prep. You don't want to be playing a lot of these. I mean, three games in 10 weeks, and really, you also don't. The conundrum here is you also don't want to push back a lot of those bye weeks into December, right? We don't want to put something where everybody has a bye week, mid-December, because then it's the whole deal. It's the inverse argument of like, these guys haven't had any breaks. That's where I think the NFL could really help themselves by giving 2 byes. Most college programs are functioning off of 2 byes. It would make sense to have 2 byes. Push it one more week. And I think you already basically, let's be honest, the preseason is a joke. So I don't want to hear any preseason arguments. So pushing it one more week is not going to kill anybody if you get 2 byes.
The NFL does have a little bit of a calendar problem, though, because everybody keeps saying like they're going to go to 18 games. But if you go to 18 games, you got to go to 2 byes. Is the logic that you keep hearing out there? But that's from a 16-game 1 bye schedule. That's 3 extra weeks on the season compared to just a few years ago. I mean, at the very least, you're going to have to start a little bit earlier. Like, you're going to have to start either Labor Day or the week before Labor Day versus the week after Labor Day, because otherwise the Super Bowl is going to be in March.
Nobody
at
wants
that point. And so it's a little bit to work through on that stuff.
I mean, the reality is that not that I'm not advocating for an 18-game schedule. The reality is like they don't have a calendar problem because they could do whatever they wanted. They could go on the front end, they could go on the back end, and people would still watch and love it. Like it is pretty wild what the NFL has created in terms of like every other sport we're watching at this point. People are like less games. In the NFL, it's just like whatever they do, people want more.
Yeah. And, I mean, it starts with the fact that they don't have way too many games to begin with. So there's the scarcity factor. And I think they're so far away from like being too many games that they could add a ton, like, and they'd still have the same scarcity advantage that they have now. Because like 82 that the NBA has compared to 18, you still have way less, and they're still way more important each time out. So yeah, I think they're in a pretty good sweet spot with that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're not going to talk about it too much, but college football finally figured it out. They're like, let's give them more games. I mean, aside from the games really sucking in the first round, like who is not pumped about the college football playoff? So it's like sweet March Madness for college football.
I think people are pumped about it. I will say one thing is like college football should have looked ahead a little bit and they could have played those playoff games any day. They could have played them like Monday leading in, or Christmas Eve on Tuesday. They put 3 of their 4 first round playoff games on the same day that the NFL was playing.
Yeah.
I just think that's always a mistake for college football.
Yeah, you're not going to get the eyes. I mean, I was having this conversation with my family on Christmas with Netflix. I said, I guarantee you they will have more numbers on Netflix, which is not streamed to everybody. It's not a national television game. You'll have more eyes on that than whatever the NBA got. I know LeBron made the comment that NBA owns Christmas or whatever, but the stats aren't going to lie on that. I mean, that's just, they're just butthurt.
NBA yesterday.
No.
Granted, I work in football now, but I don't think I would have either way.
Yeah, no one. You put NFL on the TV, no one's gonna care about mid-season NBA games.
No.
Yeah,
especially because the NFL has the advantage of it being late in the season and the games really matter.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't matter anyways. This could be week 4 and people would watch the NFL over the NBA.
Yep. One quick side note, and then we'll get into the games a little bit, and we don't have to like talk about this much. I just want to mention it. Netflix did a good job yesterday. The stream was good for the most part. Like there wasn't glitches, at least on my end where I was watching. I'm assuming it was much better than the fight that they streamed about a month ago. And the question is how much money did Netflix spend on media personalities to contract them for one day of work? Because they had just about everyone from every network working those games.
Yeah, that's wild. I couldn't believe it. And they had some weird pairings, like
Yeah.
Kay Adams and Mina Kimes. Okay, I get it. And then you have RG3 and
Who did the
Te'o.
who did the play-by-play on the Texans Ravens game?
It was Ian.
Yeah.
It was
Ian Eagle.
Ian Eagle did the
right?
Chiefs game.
I think it was Noah Eagle.
Yeah, no Eagle.
Noah Eagle. Okay, I was gonna say I was hoping to see Ian Eagle and Greg Olson together because I heard they were both going to be doing games, but they were on opposite games of each other. And then you had Nate Burleson and JJ Watt on the Chiefs game. It was a little bit of a weird dynamic having JJ Watt call his brother's game because like you can't avoid. It'd be one thing if it was like the backup left guard was his brother on the team, but TJ Watt is literally a constant talking point in a game that the Steelers are involved in, whether he's getting blocked, whether he's creating havoc. And so it was a little bit awkward always having the guy's brother analyzing his play. But
no, I will say it was really cool. He had a couple of really cool comments on kind of the in and outs of playing that position. And like kind of there was one where he was like talking about a classic chop or a hook or something like that. And it was like, you just don't normally hear that. I thought he did a relatively good job I know he does the pregame stuff, but I've never heard him commentate. I thought he did a relatively good job.
Yeah. Netflix, I was a little worried for them. Netflix did a good job. There was way too many people in a lot of the situations. Like I don't get how people don't understand. Like you don't need 5 people at that desk.
No,
5 people's too many. Like it doesn't give anyone any space to talk about. I definitely could have done without Manti Te'o.
Yes. Yes.
But I also just couldn't I just couldn't stop thinking about his story every time he was every time he was talking about football. But anyways, they did a good job, which again, it kind of like the theme of the day is it's just good for football because you have another massive tech giant who's got a little stick in the arm and they're like, oh, we can do this.
Yeah.
This is fun. Give me some more of it. Even though we just spent one of my in-laws comes from the digital marketing world. He said a 30-minute spot yesterday on Netflix was going for $750K.
30 second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not surprising. So they made a little bit of money beyond just selling more streams, which I'm sure they did as well.
Yeah.
Let's dive into the action on the field a little bit. There were 2 games yesterday. Neither one was down to the wire by any stretch of the imagination. But I think one thing that comes out of this is like the Ravens and the Chiefs both had dominating performances. The Ravens won 34-2, I believe. I know the Texans had 2. How much the Ravens ended up with became obsolete early on. And the Chiefs won 29-10. So it's kind of shaping the top of the AFC now. People were starting to fall in love with the Bills quite a bit and looking at them as like the AFC favorites. But with 2 statement wins from the other top 2 contenders in the AFC on standalone games, the Chiefs and the Ravens, does that change how we view the top of the AFC? And do the Bills take a back seat to either of those 2 teams based on those performances?
I think recently, yeah, they have to. I mean, the Bills' defense the run defense has stayed relatively stable, but the pass defense has kind of dropped off, which is really surprising. But I think a lot of it just has to do with different people coming in and out. I think people have kind of figured out a little bit. They don't really do a lot on defense. If they lose one guy, it kind of breaks that whole chain because they're trying to play too high as much as they possibly can. They are playing a little bit more close post, but if you really look at it, like these are the top 2 teams. These are the 2 teams that should end up in the championship at the end of the day. I think that they kind of made that statement. We kind of knew the Steelers were fraudulent. The Texans, again, being in that South division, are a little bit fraudulent. So it wasn't really surprising. I don't think anybody's really changing anything.
I think one of the scary things about yesterday, at least for the AFC, not scary things, but like telling things, is we know those top 3 teams in the AFC, the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Bills, but it's not like the Ravens and the Chiefs played doormats yesterday. They probably played what a lot of people would consider number 4 and number 5 in the AFC. and the games weren't competitive. And so it's hard to imagine the AFC Championship game not being two of those three teams facing off, depending on the way the paths go.
Yeah, I mean, the reality, and I actually think we've known this for a while. The reality is there's only three teams that matter in the AFC. It's the Chiefs, it's the Bills, and it's the Ravens. And the big winner of yesterday, and like at this point, you almost feel bad saying it, but the big winner of yesterday and the team that no one should want to play is the Chiefs. And the reason is solely because what they guaranteed is that they avoid Buffalo and Baltimore before the AFC Championship game, right?
Yeah.
And so that not that they couldn't lose in the divisional round, but like the Chiefs now get a month off. Like this was when everyone was sit Patrick Mahomes, you got to rest his ankle. It's like, no, go out, get 2 wins in a span of 5 days, and you give yourself a month off.
Yep.
They now have that, right? So you give Mahomes a rest, and you called it out, Sasha. I do think their bye week was week 6, not week 5. But you give Mahomes a month off. You give old ass Travis Kelce a month off, which he actually like. He's so funny, and this is with the Chiefs in general. It's like Travis Kelce for the first time all season yesterday was like, all right, I'm going to start playing because I know I got a month off after this.
Right.
They gave us a glimpse of like playoff version yesterday,
right?
Throwing it to Kelce a ton.
Well, and Hollywood Brown makes a massive difference. Like I was very surprised that just how different he makes their offense look. But I thought the announcers did a really good job of calling out, like having him in that lineup and someone who can beat man allows them to actually do what they wanted to originally do with Xavier Worthy. And it opens up the field for Travis Kelce. And then you get those intermediate crossers, which lets Justin Watson, who is fast, but all he can do is go catch deep balls, like get over the top a little bit. So he like that one piece and having Joe Thuney stabilize the left side of their line makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So the Chiefs have a month off. They avoid the Bills and Ravens. So you let those two teams beat the shit out of themselves in the divisional round, right? And you can pretty much like there's only 3 teams that matter. The Chiefs are opposite the bracket, the other 2. So they're the big winners.
They killed a lot of birds yesterday by clinching the 1 seed, but then also it just so happens that the team they beat was the Steelers, and then the Ravens winning, because if the Steelers win that division, then that's all moot, because if the Ravens end up as the 5 seed, you could play them in the divisional round. So the Ravens winning was huge for the Chiefs as well. Not clinching the AFC North, but putting them in the driver's seat for the AFC North.
Well, and the scary part too, Scott, is Aaron Schatz, who does DVOA for FTN. He just released kind of his week by week DVOA of the Chiefs offense. And what do you think it looks like? It looks like a freaking up and down, up and down, up and down. What are they doing? What have they done the last month? Stair step their way up to being elite again, which is scary because if he this is also seconded by what Jackson, our analytics guy, our data guy, has been putting out too with his EPA charts of you just see this kind of roller coaster, and then all of a sudden about a month to the end of the season, that thing just starts to just slowly start working up. You look at what the Ravens have done. They're pretty much the same as they were in week 1 as they were at the end. It's scary to think that one of the number 1 run defense in the NFL, which we know you got to run the ball to win playoff games, is going to enter in as they're also this offense that we've all been kind of poo-pooing, even though it's the most efficient offense in the NFL, is now starting to also score points and be at the elite level. It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare for anybody that's not a Chiefs fan, and it's at perfect timing. And this is why I think Andy Reid is the greatest coach of all time, is because it's just consistently showing he knows when to get his team ready at the right time. And you also have a Hall of Fame quarterback. So, I mean, it is what it is.
100%. And at some point, I'm sure we'll transition to talking about the second game yesterday, but the stark difference in the way that So we're going to talk about the Texans and how bad their offense looked and how bad CJ Stroud looked. And you can immediately go to like, well, they don't have any protection, right? And they have playmakers out. And so it just all looks terrible. It's not on CJ Stroud. The fact of the matter is like what Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but let's give Andy Reid the credit here. What he is amazing at is he just game plans around their weaknesses, whatever it is. So like the last 2 weeks, Mahomes is getting rid of the ball in an average of like 2.4 seconds per play. It's just like Andy Reid knows he has weaknesses and he just game plans around it, right? He actually uses it to his strength. He lets the other team know they have a weakness and then he plays off of it. Which is the exact opposite of what we saw in the Texans game, which is like they have zero ability to adjust once you take away the thing that makes them good.
Yeah.
So I agree. Like no one, I mean, Andy Reid has entered Belichick world of like no matter what he does, he will never win Coach of the Year. But the team's 15-1. They've had a bunch of injuries. They've got a target on their back. They're trying to do something no one has ever done. Like the reality is like Andy Reid should be the Coach of the Year, 100%.
Yes,
and like he's like 32-1 on DraftKings, I think, in terms of odds to win. But yeah.
A big part of like it's like any sport too is but especially in football, it's about peaking at the right time. I mean, you look at it like college basketball, you go into March Madness, if you're playing well then that's how you win a national championship, and the best team doesn't always win. Now in football, the best team wins more often than not, but it's the best team at the time. And he allows, I think what Andy Reid and their entire staff has done like brilliantly the last few years for sure, they allow themselves to discover their weaknesses, and then like they create the right game plans come playoff time to alleviate them and emphasize the strengths. And I think like the Chiefs realized what Scott talked about earlier, which is you win these 2 games and you got a month off before the playoffs. And the Houston game and the Steelers game were just a little like they playoff game planned for them.
Yep.
Like it's a little preview of like what you're going to see in the playoffs, because they knew if they won these 2 games, they were golden for a while, and it was play them like playoff games. And like they won a lot of 1-score games early in the year and throughout the year, through the middle part of the year. And the reality is you could lose some of those games, but like this is the best record the Chiefs have had in this entire run. Only 1 loss the whole year. And so they probably expected that they would lose some of those games. It just didn't happen that way this year, but nonetheless, they're peaking at the right time.
Yeah. They also, I know you want to transition and we don't need to belabor this point, but this is something I've talked a lot about with Andy Reid. And I remember talking about it 2 years because Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore made massive plays to win the Chiefs the Super Bowl. That Super Bowl against the Eagles 2 years ago is Andy Reid, more so than almost any other coach, lets players work through their issues. And so you think about like Xavier Worthy, who looks really good right now. Like the Andy Reid and the Chiefs let him work through like fighting with the sideline and never being able to get 2 feet in and like getting beat up by DBs all year. They let their young defensive backs like Hicks, who's starting to look really good in the secondary. Like they let their players work through those issues during the season because they know it's going to make them better in the postseason.
Yeah, and obviously you have to give a little credit to Brett Veach as well. It looked like Sky Moore was obviously a miss as a 2nd-round receiver, but if you look, they drafted receivers 3 years in a row, and Rashee Rice got injured this year, but he looked like he was going to be their clear-cut number 1, and Xavier Worthy's coming along as well. So they've done well there, and they're bad at tackle right now, but I'm sure they'll alleviate that this offseason. And Joe Tooney's done a nice job moving over there, which is crazy to have like your all-pro left guard just pop out to left tackle, and like Joe Tooney's a stud.
Yeah.
But we don't have to talk a ton about the second game. Just basically like the Ravens are peaking. It seems like the Ravens are peaking at the right time as well, and they've had a historically great offense all season long. And I know the Texans offense looked horrible yesterday, but the Ravens didn't allow them to score at all. You have to give some credit to the Ravens defense for looking more like they did last year late in the season here.
Yeah, 100%. I think moving Kyle Hamilton back full-time to safety it has just really just kind of been like, look, we're not going to play around. We're just going to leave you there. We're going to move. We're going to keep Marlon Humphrey inside. Look, we'll just deal with it. We know he's not very big, but we'll just deal with it. At least we can cover some guys. They've cleaned up the secondary a little bit, especially with kind of moving our guys around. Tre'Davious White, getting him and kind of plugging him in. He's an older veteran. They play a lot of zones, so they're able to kind of clean some things up. Obviously, the run defense has been there all year. So, yeah, they're getting together at the right time too. So it's just, look, man, the two teams you do not want to play right now is going to be the Ravens and the Chiefs at all.
Yeah, that game should be scary to people in terms of the way the Ravens defense played.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're everyone has known they've had an elite offense. Their defense has been the thing holding them back. We can talk about the struggles of CJ Stroud and Bobby Sloak and that offense, but the Ravens made them look bad. If the Ravens can play defense like that, they are. We just spent a bunch of time talking about the Chiefs, but they are every bit capable of going into Arrowhead and beating the Chiefs 100%. Like I said earlier, the only thing that was a big win for the Chiefs is that they're going to have to go into Buffalo and beat Buffalo before they go into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs. But you don't want to play that day. Also, like watching that offense where you have to commit to Derrick Henry. If you commit to Derrick Henry, Lamar's going to pull it and run around the side. If you commit too many resources to Lamar Henry, Derrick Henry's running for 9, or Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry's running for 9 yards a pop. And then, like, if you commit to both of them, like Lamar's just going to pull it and dance around for like an hour in the pocket. It's like the opposite of Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is throwing it in 2.4 seconds. Lamar's throwing it in like 8.
Right. Yeah.
Man, like that offense is
no fun.
Yeah, no fun. So that I wouldn't want to play Baltimore. And they are I guarantee you, we saw it earlier in the year, like they're the one team that Buffalo doesn't want to play because they're a bad matchup for them. So like you can almost guarantee you we're getting that in Buffalo on January 16th or whatever.
I'm just gonna agree.
Yeah. It'll be a interesting game. I think like your point about them being a bad matchup for Buffalo is a good one. It opens up the door for another Chiefs-Ravens AFC Championship game as a strong possibility. I'm going to add Felix Johnson to the stage now. Felix, did you have a Merry Christmas?
Yeah, it was fine until now.
What are you upset about?
I mean, we're just kind of the Ravens are very good. I don't
He just loves Buffalo.
I don't have a problem with believing that they're one of the more dangerous teams. I'm just not shocked that they beat a Steelers team that we all kind of believed was a little bit fugazi and just kind of the Steelers. They get their 8, 9, 10 wins, and then Mike Tomlin's like, all right, I'm done coaching this year. Then the Texans, we all kind of have a feeling about the Texans, whether it be about CJ Stroud or Bobby Slowick or whatever it may be. And if you look at the 2 games, the teams that played on Saturday and the teams that played on Sunday, the same ones lost. And so I just think that like what we said, there's kind of a separation between the tippy top of the AFC and everybody else. I just don't know if the Ravens are on the same level as Kansas City. Like, I mean, this is we just talked about how the Chiefs are stepping their game up. Just as good of a chance that the Ravens have of going into Arrowhead and beating the Chiefs, they could lose in the first round. It's just that simple. So, like, sure, they're dangerous, but also to themselves.
Yeah, who do you think they're losing to in the first round?
I don't know. I don't know, honestly, but Lamar Jackson hasn't played well in the playoffs for a lot of his career. So
they're going to play.
It could happen.
They're more than likely going to play the Broncos or the Chargers, and it could happen.
Especially if it's the Broncos.
Yeah.
I think the Broncos match up against
another Harbaugh between the brothers. Like, that's another matchup that you can see. I mean, I just don't think it's as easy for the Ravens as you guys may have made it seem.
I think the difficult part too is like we've always known the Ravens are the ultimate front runners. Like they will blow a team out if they're better than them. And because the Steelers and the Texans are both going to go to the playoffs, they're getting a lot of credit for these wins. But the way they're playing, the way those two teams are playing right now, especially the Texans, is not exactly playoff caliber.
Like particularly the Texans win, the way the Ravens beat them, it reminded me exactly of what the Ravens did to the 49ers last year. They beat the hell out of them. It's almost the same exact scheme and a young quarterback. And so it's just kind of the same thing that the Ravens were last year. And frankly, they were better last year.
Yeah, I think people get recency bias with the Ravens because of Lamar. So like they'll have a win like this, but then they'll go and lose, and you'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's right, I forgot." I mean, remember they are 11-5, so there's I mean, they haven't really played and the 5 losses they've had. Sometimes it's been like a total stinker, and you're just like,
There's
the Raiders and the Browns.
Yeah,
right.
I forgot about the Harbaugh. If I was the Ravens, I would really not want. I think the Ravens smoke the Broncos if they play them. Sorry, Cody.
That's all right.
But I just because of the dynamic, the brother dynamic, and I really would not want to play the Chargers. And you could see that turning into a really physical, really ugly game where the Chargers could beat them.
Yeah. That's my whole thing is that I just think that the Ravens we're excited because we saw them beat a team 31-2 yesterday, but this is a team that did lose to the Raiders right after barely losing to the Chiefs and losing to the Browns. They've had their issues, and Lamar Jackson is a bit of a liability in the playoffs. He only has one good playoff game in the ones that he has played in.
Yeah, but the problem, I mean, let's just acknowledge that if their defense plays like that, they're a really dangerous team. And we can't give the Chiefs offense credit for like improving throughout the season and being like, holy shit, that's a different and better offense than we saw for several of the weeks during the season, and not say the same thing about the Ravens defense.
Right. And that's what threw me off. I mean, you're almost exactly right about feeling the same way about the Chiefs, because Sasha and I had many conversations on the radio about this. They had the same personnel. Why aren't they as good when they were coming from the Eagles Super Bowl win going into last season? It's the same personnel. Why aren't they as good? It's the same thing with the Ravens, kind of like what Cody was saying earlier. They had some different pieces in different spots. You have most of the same personnel. I know you have a new defensive coordinator, but why aren't you at least some of what you were? And they weren't until now. And so they do deserve that credit.
I want to get into the power rankings, but I will give a little caveat on what Scott said is you do have to give people credit for getting better throughout the season, but there is a difference between the Chiefs and the Ravens. The Chiefs have a pedigree of peaking in the playoffs and have won 3 Super Bowls, and we expect that if they are showing signs of being better, that's gonna really materialize in the playoffs. The Ravens have a track record of pissing down their leg in the playoffs. So, for lack of a better term, I could have said that more judiciously, but
that's fine. It's fine. And you're right.
Until it matters.
That comment right there is going to come back to bite me. I'm sure of it when the Ravens beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. Let's take a quick look at the power rankings. We won't spend a ton of time on it today. These are all heading into week 17, so written before the results yesterday. I don't know that it would have changed anything too much. Chargers, number 10. Washington Commanders got the win over the Eagles, move into 9. Both those teams were out of the rankings the week before. Which I should mention, they knocked out the Steelers and the Broncos. And honorable mentions were the Texans and the Bengals. Number 8, the Rams stay put at 8 after beating the Jets. The Packers' dominating performance on Monday night earns them the 7 spot, actually moved down 1 from 6. The Ravens move up 1 from 7 to 6. Looks pretty reasonable after what we saw yesterday. The Eagles move from 3 to 5 after losing to the Commanders. Minnesota Vikings move up 1 to number 4, continue to win 13-2 now. Detroit Lions move from 4 to 3 with another victory over the Bears. The Buffalo Bills outlasted the Patriots, stay at 2. And the Chiefs, and I don't think Scott's going to have as many qualms with this as he has the last few weeks, stay at number 1 with 2 wins since the last time we talked about this over the Texans and the Steelers. Cody, anything you would change about the rankings?
I just think probably the way that I would do it, that I would have just I would have moved the Ravens probably up to 3. But that would have been post. I mean, obviously this was made before the Christmas game. That would be the only thing that I would move. I think pre-Christmas pre-Christmas, this is fine. Post-Christmas, I think we probably want to move the Ravens up. I do think the Ravens are better than the Vikings and better than the Eagles, especially. Look, the Eagles. It's again that NFC East. Whoever wins it, it just makes you feel really comfortable. They get you feeling they will have a bunch of wins, and then you go and you really look at it, and most of their wins are against divisional opponents, and it's just not a. It's kind of like you're eating a lot of fast food, right? It's not healthy. These aren't healthy wins. These aren't wins that translate into playoff wins. So I'm okay with, I would probably say the Eagles, and then just the Vikings. The Vikings are a weird spot because I think everybody believes in the defense, but the defense has major flaws. If you can protect and you can throw the ball down the field, you're going to be successful. So I think that's one of the issues there with the defense. But then, on the other side, and it's not even Darnold. It's just kind of like, look, we know you have you have Justin Jefferson. Addison has really picked up because people have started doubling Jefferson more. But I just don't think that people are really convinced that offense can take you all the way to the Super Bowl. I don't think it's one of those 49ers Brock Purdy deals where we're just waiting for Brock Purdy to turn into a pumpkin. I don't think we're waiting for Darnold. It's just that team has flaws that I think are going to then come out in the playoffs. They may not come out in the first round, but that's why I would just move the Ravens up above those two teams.
Well, I think the hard part about moving the Ravens up, and maybe my brain's too much already in the playoffs, but that's where we're looking at. A lot of what we've talked about with the Ravens is that their track to even get to the AFC Championship game is going to be really hard, whether it's the Chargers or the Broncos. Then they probably have to go play the Bills and then Kansas City, and then what that may look like. In Minnesota, they might just win 2 games and walk into the Super Bowl. And they might be hosting those games at the bank. And so in Detroit for that matter too, they could be in a similar situation. So if we talk about their paths to winning the Super Bowl, those other teams have a better path, including the Eagles, because they're probably locked into the 2 seed at this point too. So those teams have a better path than the Ravens. And the Ravens, you talk about the fatal flaws that those teams have. The Ravens also have those flaws too heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, the reality is I don't see how this Vikings team is any different than the 49ers from last year. An elite play caller, right, with a quarterback that's, quite frankly, Darnold's probably better than Purdy, right? But with a quarterback which is above average, can certainly run an offense when you have an elite play caller, and then elite weapons on the outside. Let me just say this on the rest of the offense. And if you think about Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, McCaffrey, Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, I would say you're generally on par with those two. And the Vikings have a better defense. So to me, the model that Minnesota's running is the model the 49ers have been running for years, which is give me an elite play caller, give me elite weapons, give me an average quarterback. And it's working. So I don't know. I think, Felix, I don't want to say this, but it's Christmas. I'm not sure I have a single gripe about your power rankings this week. There's only 17 in my mind. You could kind of move the top 7 around, but there's only 7 teams that matter. There's only 7 teams that are going to win the Super Bowl, and they're the 7 teams you have up top.
Right.
So, yes, we talked about the 3 in the AFC. The top 3 in the NFC are the Lions, the Eagles, and the Vikings. And then obviously Scott goes to 7 with the Packers. I was going to leave it at 6 and ask if anybody else could go to the Super Bowl just to give you guys a chance to have an answer, which would be the Packers. But since Scott already let the cat out of the bag, anyone outside of those top 7, even I know what Felix is going to say, I think, but anyone outside of those top 7 have a chance to go to the Super Bowl, not even win it.
Yeah, it's the Rams.
Yeah,
which again, Felix has got them at 8. But if there was, you can't take anyone else in the AFC because we just saw what the Steelers and Texans are 4 or 5, and the Texans have finally reached the point of this. Sorry, I'm getting a million text messages. The Texans have finally reached the point of you can't take this team seriously. And CJ Stroud's had a pretty major, regardless of what's going around him, have had a pretty major sophomore regression. So the AFC is those three teams. If it's anyone, it would be the Rams.
So the AFC version of the Rams, I think, or I would think, I don't know if there is one exactly, but I'm looking at the Chargers, which is the other team in LA. Do you like if the Chargers and the Rams played today, who would you like to win?
I'd probably still take the Rams.
Me too.
Rams.
I'd even argue that the AFC version of the Rams, even though they probably won't make the playoffs, is Cincinnati. They can still kind of weave their way in via tiebreakers and whatnot. But being that they have that quarterback and the weapons outside, they might be able to work their way through. But it's not likely.
Cincinnati is the wild card in this whole thing because we're rightfully not talking about them because they're probably not going to be in the playoffs. But if they snuck in, that would be your next team in the AFC that you could see doing something because they'd be on like a 6 or 7 game win streak at that point if they got in, and they're the one team that we've actually seen beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. By the AFC.
They're not going to make the playoffs, but you're right. The thing that's interesting that no one's talking about, I feel like, with the Rams and your comment about them being the Bengals being the AFC version of the Rams made me think of this. I listened to a podcast, Robert Mays of The Athletic, before the season where he interviewed Sean McVay. And McVay actually talked a lot about Andy Reid and the Chiefs and that team transitioning to being a very physical, grinded out, can win 19-16 type games. He just talked about how no one gives the Chiefs credit for their physicality. And what have you seen from the Rams this year? Like, yeah, they had the 44-42 shootout with the Bills, but they actually are way more. They're way more physical than you give them credit for, right? They've got a bunch of young physical players on defense, and they can win 19-16 game like that. Like that's why they're different than the Bengals, because they actually have the ability. And sometimes McVay does this. Like last weekend against the Jets, he's like, "Cool, I'm not going to use Kupp and Nakua. I'm just going to run the crap out of the ball, and I'm happy to win a 19-13, 19-16 game." And I don't know that McVay and the Rams are getting enough credit for, I think he realized that to be a sustainable winning team, you actually have to get more physical and be able to win different types of games.
And I think you highlighted right there, without meaning to, why the Bengals aren't the Rams of the AFC, even if they were going to make the playoffs. Zach Taylor's not Sean McVay.
For sure.
And the question, and this is probably a question for another pod, but I think there could be serious questions around Zach Taylor's job this offseason. Because, I mean, the Bengals have to go to the playoffs if Joe Burrow's healthy the whole year. And you don't want to waste Burrow's prime. And Zach Taylor did make that Super Bowl, so that bought him a couple of years. And I don't know that he gets fired or not, but it's just you have to take a serious look at it. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins this offseason as well. The Bengals may have blown their last best chance with Burrow still on a cheap deal. Even though he's already signed the extension, he was still the low cap hit this year. So that'll be a good fodder for the offseason, but we'll save it for another day. We're gonna take a quick break, take Felix off the stage. We'll get into the rest of this week's action, week 17 action on the other side. You're listening to The Matchup by Field Vision Sports. Stay with us. Welcome back in to The Matchup by Field Vision Sports. Excited to be back with you. We had a rousing first segment looking at the Christmas Day games. It's kind of nice to have a couple of games fresh in your mind while recording the pod. We're recording today on Thursday, one day later than normal, but it should be up for you in time for this weekend's action. For Saturday, Sunday, Monday slate, we've got a few games that have playoff implications on both sides. On Saturday, the big game of the day is the Broncos-Bengals. And then on Sunday, you've got the Packers and Vikings fighting for seeding, fighting for the 1 seed for the Vikings. Packers trying to stay out of the 6 seed, stay out of the 7 seed and get the 6 seed. And then On Sunday night, you've got the Falcons and the Commanders. Falcons trying to hold on to the NFC South, and the Commanders fighting with the Packers for that to stay out of the 7 seed. Out of those 3 games, which one are you most looking forward to, Scott?
I mean, it's got to be Vikings Packers, right? I mean, that division has been, I think, without question, been the best division in all of football throughout the course of the year.
Is it one of the best divisions you've ever seen?
Could be. I mean, I guess let's forget about the Bears, who I almost just said aren't as bad as we make them out to be because they're in that division, but I think they are pretty bad. But like it's got 3 elite teams, and at least when we started this podcast, the Vikings were home dogs to the Packers, which is kind of crazy. I'm sure they both played the Seahawks the last 2 weeks, and those outcomes are probably clouding that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, huge implications for Minnesota. They could be the 1 seed. And Sasha, you brought it up, but probably big implications for the Packers as well, just because they're trying to. I mean, I think they're probably locked into that 6th seed, but they could either drop to 7 or move up to 5, which being in 5 or 6 in the NFC is a big win because you don't want to play the Eagles.
Yeah. To your point about the Bears, though, is like it's a tough spot to be in a division where you got 6 losses on your resume before the season even starts, which granted we didn't know that going in, but the way it's played out is like the Lions, the Packers, and the Vikings basically haven't lost to anyone but each other. So the Bears losing to those 3 teams twice each it doesn't mean they're the worst team ever. It just means they're not as good as those 3 teams, but they have looked bad at times.
Although they got hammered by the 49ers, they got hammered by the Cardinals. Like there's a lot of other games that'll show you that the Bears aren't that good of a team.
Yeah.
Cody, are you the Falcons Commanders game? Obviously, Michael Penix is making his 2nd start ever versus Jaden Daniels, who's been playing well all year. It's 2 top 10 rookie quarterbacks. Do you give the Falcons a puncher's chance going into Washington?
I don't. And the reason why is the Commanders' defense has been playing so much better, and I don't really think that they're going to give problems to the Commanders. You know, what gives the Commanders defense problems is teams that spread them out, which they showed that they actually played really well against the Eagles. You could argue that Hurts getting hurt changes the dynamic. I get that, but you know, you have 2 box linebackers that don't really want to leave the box. They don't want to play in space. Bobby Wagner's really an A-gap plugger guy. He defends the run. You got Luvu, who's kind of a hybrid guy that moves around. You know, they've cleaned up that secondary. I think Lattimore gives them a really good spot. Lattimore also knows the Falcons really well. I just don't see them scoring enough points against the Commanders to win that game. I think if there's a team that gets hot late in the NFC, I think it's the Commanders, just because of the way we know Jaden Daniels can play, and then the defense has progressively gotten better.
Yeah, Cody, I'm gonna give you a little shit here. Is getting better really giving up 33 points to Kenny Pickett for 3 quarters against the Eagles?
Well, and again, getting better is relative, right? So when we see, and again, it goes also back to what I said, matchups matter in the playoffs. The Falcons want to get in 21 personnel, 12 personnel. They want to condense the sets. They want to run the ball. They want to they want to throw into the intermediate, right? I think what the Eagles want to do is the Eagles want to spread you out. They want to play 10 personnel. They want to find zones that are voided. If you're going to play man, then they're just going to throw bombs on you. And so, yeah, again, it goes back to what I always talk about is matchups. The matchups with the Eagles don't matter. They were able to still win. I think if Hurts plays, that game's a little different. If we're going to fast forward to the Falcons game, I don't think the Falcons do anything offensively that are going to force them out of what they're doing. Also, for a guy like Jaden Daniels, who's very accurate, Atlanta doesn't get any pressure on the quarterback. He's going to have all the time in the world to be able to throw. And I just don't think it's a good matchup for the Falcons.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the Falcons will be able to run the ball on them. And I know that was you can't say it wasn't an impressive win for the Commanders last weekend because it was. But when you think about the fact that the Eagles, Kenny Pickett played 3 of those quarters, they turned the ball over a ton, and they still needed a drop by Devonta Smith, a drop by Saquon Barkley to win that game. I go to the Falcons have more to play for in this game. I think they're going to be a bit of a desperate team, and they have the element of surprise because Penix looked good. You don't quite know what that offense is going to look like with a new quarterback.
We don't know exactly what the Falcons are with Penix yet, and
Right.
that's kind of the crux of the whole thing because they have weapons and the defense has played okay. Let's dive into picks, fellas. We've got an over/under, game pick, and a prop pick from all three of us heading into week 17 or with the games that are left in week 17. I'll go first this week. I'm going to start with my prop pick. I'm going to go opposite of what we put in best bets. Same team, same position, same everything. But the other running back, I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back, Rachaad White. Just to mix it up a little bit, I'll go Rachaad White over. He only got 3 carries last week. So, and his number's 41, I think. So you might be asking why go Rachaad White over when he got 3 carries last week. Each of the 5 weeks before that, he got double-digit carries. So it seems like they're only using Bucky Irving, but they're really using both a lot. He did fumble at the end of the Cowboys game. Scott brought that up in our best bets meeting. But I mean, he's a veteran guy. He's been there 3 years. I don't think he's going to just like ride the pine because of one fumble. And I see him probably getting about 10 carries like he has been, besides last week against the Cowboys when they were playing from behind for a good portion of the game and they were using him as a receiver more. And so I like him to go over 41 yards against the Panthers. My game pick is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals -3 against the Broncos. This is more like a selfish, like I want to see the Bengals miss the playoffs, but I'd love it to come down to week 18 and the Chiefs just knock them out of the playoffs by losing to the Broncos. And I think this does go down to week 18. I think the Bengals get the win. They're -3 in this game. They've kind of been on a heater, or some spreads are 3, some 3.5. I think we have it at -3 right now, so we'll go with that. The Bengals offense has been playing really good. Their defense has looked better. Although they've had some like they played the Titans and who'd they play last week?
Blanking.
One of us should know that.
I
just know I picked them up in fantasy as my defense the last 2 weeks, and they've scored. They played
They played the Browns
and
Yes.
Thompson Robinson.
2
That's
weeks,
right.
so they've had some opportunities to look
Forgettable.
better. Let's
Did you
say
know?
that.
Did you know for his career, Dorian DTR has 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions?
It's insane. Yeah.
It's a great ratio.
Congrats, Bengals defense.
And then for my over/under, I'm going to go to that Eagles-Cowboys game. We were talking about the Eagles and Kenny Pickett coming in last week. The over/under on that game is 40, which is exceptionally low. Like, even if Kenny Pickett's playing, the Cowboys offense, like the Cowboys defense looked great. They looked really good against the Bucs, and that game still went over. It still went to 50 points. It was 26-24. And the Cowboys offense has been moving the ball like 40. I mean, 21-20 gets you there. I think like that's way too low a number for two offenses that have looked Cowboys decent and the Eagles really good all year long. The only thing that gives me pause, Jalen Hurts may or may not play. I will take it with Kenny Pickett in, but Kenny Pickett is also on the injury report with ribs. So that's that may be why the number is where it is right now. So get it now before it goes up, because once they determine a quarterback, that number might go a little bit higher. But I'll go over 40 for Cowboys Eagles.
Is it? I don't think we should spend a bunch of time talking about this, but I've been thinking about this for a while. Is it weird that the Cowboys offense looks better with Cooper Rush playing?
It has both times that he's come in.
I know.
I've got a friend who's a huge Cowboys fan, and he's been beating the drum since before this season to just go with Cooper Rush, trade, but they screwed up their chance. They said they were going to make Dak play a prove it year this year and become a true free agent, and instead they gave him money at the 11th hour right before the season. They're paying him $60 million a year now, starting right after this season. So there's nothing they can do about it.
I really think it's because they commit to the run game.
Yeah.
I really think that's what it is. I think that's the difference. When you have Cooper Rush, you're committed to the run game. That's why Rico Dowdle has had an explosion. People are around here like, oh, guess we don't need a running back in the first round anymore. It's like, not that they were going to draft a running back in the first round, but it's like, it just shows you that what everybody's been talking about is that you're too over-reliant on Dak. You need to give him a run game. You didn't. Ends up getting hurt. Once he gets hurt, man, you look awesome. I mean, because Rush has played really, really well in both times that he's come in. And again, it's the commitment to the run game, simpler game plan. Get the ball to CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
One quick aside, and I'll say this about people talk trash on like first round running backs. If you look at our threat ratings right now, the top 4 in our threat ratings for running backs are Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, in that order. I can't remember if Derrick Henry was late first or early second, but the other 3 were all, he's second rounder. Felix, thanks in the chat. The other 3 were all first round running backs. So like it does and Christian McCaffrey was a first round running back. It's like a center. You don't usually miss when you draft a running back.
If you hit, that guy's different, right? Okay, Bijan, he's different, right? Christian McCaffrey, different. Saquon Barkley, different. You draft a guy like that. I think that's why everybody is arguing about Genty, because how much added value does Genty give you in the passing game? Where we knew what we were getting in Saquon, we knew what we were getting in McCaffrey, which are probably the poster children for hybrid running backs. Those guys, but you can find in Ashton Genty what he's doing. You can find that in second round in terms of just a battering ram guy, like that is going to eat up a bunch of carries.
We'll go to Cody's picks next, but Felix did put a little fly in the ointment of the first round thing, bringing up Richardson in the chat.
But I think
the crazy thing is he was good his rookie year.
Yes,
and then he got traded and just fell off a cliff. So who knows what happened with that?
You can't anyone drafted by the Browns is excluded from all relevant conversations.
He was good until he got traded to the Colts, right? Or did he get traded from the Colts to the Browns?
We beat the Colts.
Another strong team. Shout out Joe Namath. All right, Cody, let's hear your 3 picks.
All right, I've got Tua under 235 and a half against Cleveland. Schwartz always plays Shanahan-style teams really, really well. I know everybody's like, oh, well, they don't have anything to play for, but defensively, all those guys are either getting close to being free agents or trying to get that next paycheck. I think the defense is going to show up. Over under, I've got Green Bay and Minnesota over 48.5. I think that's going to be an absolute shootout. I know Vikings defense has kind of cooled off in the run game in particular, and that's where the Packers have actually kind of stepped their game up. They've kind of cleaned it up for Jordan Love. So I think that game goes over. And then the last one, I think the Browns cover again. I'm going to go with the Browns again. I think the Browns cover 6.5. That's a lot of points. And again, I get it. They're not playing for anything. They don't have quarterback. You just pointed out the deal, but this is a game that literally could be like 13-10, 13-12, something ridiculous. 18 with 6 field goals. Like it's something that's going to be really low and really close.
All right. Sounds good. Scott, what do you got this week? Just real quick for the record. Trent Richardson was drafted by Cleveland, then traded to Indianapolis out of the league after 3 years.
Yep.
Great player.
Bama legend.
I'm going to stick with that for my prop. And by the way, I continue to go 2-1. You are what your record says you are. I'm happy with that. I'm struggling to make ground up on Sasha because he also keeps going 2-1. But I'm feeling 3-0 this week. I'm going to stick with that Packers-Vikings game, best game of the weekend. I agree, Cody. There's going to be a lot of offense. I'm gonna go with old trusty Jordan Addison over. I think this Packers secondary is gettable. It's gettable only by good quarterbacks.
Mhm.
So it's not gettable when they play. Who'd the Vikings play this past weekend? Oh, the Seahawks.
Yeah, Seahawks.
Fourth time
You
we've
know.
done that today. You can tell it's the day after Christmas.
Yeah. I think I no, they didn't. No, the Packers didn't play the Seahawks. Oh,
The Packers played the
Hey,
Saints.
the Saints. Packers played the Saints.
The Packers played the Saints.
Vikings played the Seahawks.
And I might have no betting stories, but I might have done an adjusted over in that game, and then immediately realized that Spencer Rattler is an expert at doing something really stupid anytime they cross the midfield point. But that the Packers secondary is definitely gettable by good quarterbacks. So give me Jordan I'm sure they'll double Justin Jefferson. Give me Jordan Addison over. It's in the low 50s, I think 51.5. I'm also going with Sasha, you went to the Bengals Broncos game. I 100% think that's going to be a shootout. I do think the Bengals win. The Broncos defense has been good all season. They have shown, whether it was against the Browns, whether it was against the Chargers last week, that against a good offense, like you can put up a ton of points on them, and the Bengals are going to put up a ton of points on them. So give me over 49.5 in that game, because the Bengals are going to put up a ton of points. You also know the Broncos are going to fight, and their offense has been pretty decent. Bengals defense sucks. So over 49.5. And then I'm going to go to the Monday night game for my game pick, a game that I'm sure the NFL, when they looked at this, thought it would be probably one of the best 2 or 3 games of the entire season. Doesn't have that so much. You got Lions at the 49ers. The line is Lions favored by 3.5. I don't get why we're giving the 49ers so much credit. I actually feel like we did this last week with the Lions as well after that loss to the Bills, where it's like, hey, their defense sucks. They're going to Chicago. They're only favored by 6.5. And everyone there, I saw a lot of people picking that as like as Bears money line. The Lions are playing for the 1 seed. I think they're going to put up 1,000,000 points against the 49ers defense that, quite frankly, has not been good. And they need to fire Nick Sorensen. Or I shouldn't. I feel bad asking for people's job. He just hasn't done a good job this year, right? They switched coordinators over the offseason. He hasn't done a good job this year. So give me the Lions to cover 3.5 against San Francisco.
Fellas, good episode. Scott's got Jordan Addison over 52.5, Lions minus 3.5, Bengals Broncos over 49.5. Cody's got Tua Tagovailoa under 235.5, Green Bay Minnesota over, Browns plus 6.5. I've got Rashad White over 41, Cincinnati minus 3, and Eagles Cowboys over 40. Any last words for the people on the day after Christmas?
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Football never stops.
That's right.
Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas. You've been listening to the Matchup by Field Vision Sports. Follow us on X at Field Vision MI, Field Vision Sports on Instagram. Check out the blog, fieldvisionsports.com. Check out the app, download it in the App Store or the Google Play Store, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Hey, Sasha, we didn't even talk about the fact that we were 16-4 last week and 14-6 the week before. Might want to throw our picks in an ice bath.
There you go.